My name is Dorothy Hayes, and I'm 67 years old. I've been a housekeeper for the Patterson family for 38 years, since before their son Robert was even born. I changed his diapers, taught him to tie his shoes, helped him with homework, and watched him grow from a sweet boy into a successful man. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for standing at Robert's wedding reception last Saturday evening when someone tapped my shoulder and asked the question that changed everything. I was at the dessert table, carefully arranging the petits fours, when a woman in an expensive dress approached me. She looked at my simple navy dress, the nicest one I owned, and smiled the way rich people smile at service workers. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with politeness that barely hid her confusion. "I don't think we've met. Who are you?" Before I could answer, another guest joined us. "Yes, I was wondering the same thing. Are you with the catering staff? Because the servers are wearing black and you're in navy." I opened my mouth to explain, but then Robert's new mother-in-law, Victoria Sterling, appeared. She looked at me, then at the confused guests, and her face went pale. Victoria started, then stopped. She looked around nervously as if deciding what to say. "She's the help. She works for the Patterson family. I don't know why she's here at the reception." The two guests looked relieved, like that explanation made sense. Like it was perfectly normal for the help to be wandering around a wedding reception. But I wasn't wandering. I'd been invited, or at least I thought I had been. I looked across the room and caught Robert's eye. He'd heard the exchange. He'd seen his new mother-in-law call me the help. He'd watched these guests question my presence. And the look on his face told me he was torn between doing what was right and doing what would keep his new wife and her family happy. That's when his wife Lauren appeared, champagne glass in hand, looking annoyed. "Robert, why is Dorothy still here? The ceremony is over. I thought your mother was sending her home." "Lauren, we need to talk." "Not now, we have guests. Can someone please escort Dorothy out? This is awkward." "Escort me out?" I repeated, my voice stronger than I felt. "Robert, I was invited to this wedding. Your mother invited me months ago." "I know, Dorothy, but—" Lauren interrupted. "My mother is right. This is uncomfortable for our guests. You're wonderful, Dorothy, really. You've been great to Robert's family, but you're not actually family. This is a family event." The room around us had gone quiet. Guests were watching, listening, waiting to see what would happen. "Not family," I repeated. "Lauren, I raised your husband. I've known him since the day he was born." "And we appreciate your service," Victoria chimed in, her voice condescending. "But surely you understand this is not appropriate. You're here as an employee, not as a guest." I looked at Robert, my Robert, the boy I'd loved like my own son, the child I'd cared for when his parents were too busy with work and social obligations, the teenager I'd consoled when his girlfriend broke his heart, the young man I'd encouraged when he doubted himself. "Robert," I said quietly, "tell them who I am." And that's when it happened. That's when someone, one of the confused guests, asked the question that made the entire room go silent. "Who are you? I mean, really. Because if you're just the housekeeper, why is there such a big deal about you being here?" The room went completely quiet. Every conversation stopped. Every guest turned to look at us. The band stopped playing. Even the servers froze mid-pour. And I realized nobody knew. These 200 wealthy guests at this elaborate wedding had no idea who I really was, had no idea what I'd done for Robert, had no idea that while his parents built their real estate empire and climbed the social ladder, I'd been the one raising their son. Robert looked at me, then at Lauren, then at his parents, Richard and Margaret Patterson, who just noticed the commotion and were making their way toward us. I made a decision in that moment. A decision that would expose truths this family had carefully hidden. A decision that would reveal secrets Lauren's family definitely didn't know. Because you see, I wasn't just Robert's housekeeper. I was so much more than that. And it was time everyone knew exactly who I was and what I'd done. But before I tell you what happened when I answered that question, before I reveal what made that room go completely silent, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. Click it. Then smash that like button, because this story is about to show you what happens when the people who raised you forget your value. Turn on those notifications, that bell icon, because you need to see what I said when someone asked who I was. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. What city? What state? What country? I want to know who's here with me today. Because what happened when I answered that question, when I told those 200 wealthy guests exactly who I was, changed everything. For Robert, for his parents, for Lauren and her family, for everyone. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you how a housekeeper became family, and how that family forgot what family really means. To understand what happened at that wedding reception, you need to understand my relationship with the Patterson family. I started working for Richard and Margaret Patterson 38 years ago. I was 29 years old, a widow with no children of my own. My husband had died in a factory accident, and I needed work. The Pattersons needed a live-in housekeeper for their new mansion. Margaret Patterson was pregnant with Robert when I started. She was a successful real estate developer. Richard ran an investment firm. They were busy, ambitious people building an empire. When Robert was born, I was there. I held him before some of his relatives did. I was the one who woke up with him at night when he cried because Margaret needed her sleep for important meetings. I was the one who walked him until he stopped fussing. As Robert grew, I was the one who was there. His first steps, I saw them. His first words, he said them to me. His first day of school, I took him because his parents had business trips. I'm not saying Richard and Margaret were bad parents. They loved Robert, but they were busy. Their careers demanded time and attention, so I became the constant in Robert's life. I cooked his meals, I helped with homework. I attended parent-teacher conferences when his parents couldn't. I taught him to ride a bike. I bandaged his scrapes. I listened to his problems. When Robert was 8, he started calling me Mama D just between us when his parents weren't around. I told him he shouldn't, I wasn't his mother. But he said, "You're the one who's always here. That makes you my mama too." I treasured that name. Mama D, it made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't just an employee. As Robert grew older, our bond strengthened. When he was 12 and struggled with bullies at school, he came to me first. When he was 16 and heartbroken over a girl, I was the one who sat with him while he cried. When he was 18 and choosing colleges, I was the one who helped him think through his options. His parents provided everything materially, but emotionally, that was me. I didn't mind. Robert filled a void in my life, the child I'd never had, the family I'd lost when my husband died. Margaret and Richard were grateful. They paid me well. They gave me a comfortable room in their house. They treated me with a certain respect. But they also kept a distance. I was the help. Valued help, important help, but still help. When Robert graduated from college, Margaret threw a big party. She invited her business associates, wealthy friends, Robert's college friends. But when I asked if I should attend, she hesitated. "Dorothy, that's so sweet, but it's really more of a formal event, you understand." I understood. I wasn't part of their public life. I was part of their private household. Robert was upset. "Mom, Dorothy should be there. She's been more involved in my education than anyone." "Robert, honey, Dorothy is wonderful, but she's our employee. It would be awkward for her and for our guests." "Awkward how?" "People wouldn't understand. They'd wonder why our housekeeper was at a graduation party with our friends and business associates." "Who cares what they think?" "We care. We have a reputation to maintain." Robert came to me later. "I'm sorry, Mama D, I tried." "It's okay, sweetheart, I understand." But it hurt, being loved in private but hidden in public. When Robert got engaged to Lauren last year, I was thrilled. Robert was 32, successful, happy. Lauren seemed nice enough, polished, educated. From a wealthy family. The first time Robert brought Lauren to meet his parents, I served them dinner. Lauren barely acknowledged me, just a polite "thank you" when I set her plate down. After dinner, I overheard them talking in the living room. Your parents' house is beautiful, Lauren said. Thanks, I grew up here. And they still have live-in help. That's so traditional. Dorothy's not just help. She's been with my family since before I was born. She's like family. Lauren laughed. Robert, she's your housekeeper. That's sweet that you're fond of her, but she's not family. You can't blur those lines. I'm not blurring anything. Dorothy raised me. No, your parents raised you. Dorothy worked for your parents. There's a difference. I heard Robert try to explain, but Lauren wasn't interested. To her, I was just hired help, nothing more. Over the next few months of wedding planning, I saw Robert less and less. He moved out of his parents' house and into an apartment with Lauren. When he did visit, Lauren was usually with him, and she'd treat me with polite dismissiveness. Dorothy, could you bring us some tea? Dorothy, Robert's old room is dusty. Could you clean it? Never asking about my life. Never talking to me like a person, just giving orders. I mentioned it to Margaret once. Lauren doesn't seem to understand my relationship with Robert. Margaret sighed. Dorothy, I know Robert is very attached to you, but Lauren comes from a different world. Her family has staff too, but they maintain very clear boundaries. Maybe Robert needs to learn those boundaries. Boundaries? Margaret, I've been part of this family for 38 years. You've worked for this family for 38 years. There's a difference, Dorothy, and I think it's time we all acknowledged that. That conversation stung. After nearly 4 decades, Margaret was reminding me of my place. 6 months before the wedding, Robert came to see me privately. Mama D, I need to talk to you about something. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. It's about the wedding. Lauren and her mother are handling most of the planning, and they have opinions about the guest list. Okay. They don't think you should come to the wedding. My heart sank. What? Lauren says it would be awkward. Her family doesn't invite their household staff to family events. She thinks it would be weird to have you there. Robert, I've known you your entire life. I raised you, and I'm not invited to your wedding. I told her that's ridiculous. I told her your family to me, but she won't budge, and her mother is backing her up. They keep saying it's inappropriate to mix staff with guests. What do your parents say? They're trying to stay neutral. They don't want to upset Lauren's family. This wedding it's also a business opportunity. Lauren's father and my dad are talking about a major investment partnership. My parents don't want to rock the boat. So I'm being sacrificed for business. I won't let that happen. Mama D, I'm going to fight for you. You will be at my wedding. 2 months before the wedding, Robert came to me with what he thought was good news. I talked to my parents. They talked to Lauren and her mother. You're invited to the wedding. Really? Yes, Lauren agreed on certain conditions. Conditions? You'll sit in the back, not with family or VIPs, and you'll need to leave before the reception. The ceremony only. I see. I know it's not ideal, but it's something. At least you'll be there to see me get married. Robert, that's not being there. That's being tolerated. Mama D, I'm trying. But Lauren and her family are very firm about this. If I push too hard, they might uninvite you altogether. 3 weeks before the wedding, things changed again. Margaret came to my room. Dorothy, I talked to Lauren's mother, Victoria. She feels terrible about the restrictions on your attendance. She wants to extend an olive branch. What kind of olive branch? You can stay for the whole reception. We'll find you a table in the back, away from the main guests, but you can stay. How generous. Dorothy, please don't be sarcastic. We're trying to include you in a way that's comfortable for everyone. Comfortable for everyone except me. You're being difficult. We're giving you an opportunity to attend an event you technically shouldn't be attending at all. Please be grateful. Grateful. They wanted me to be grateful for being allowed to attend the wedding of a boy I'd raised. The day of the wedding arrived. I dressed carefully in my navy blue dress, the nicest one I owned. I'd saved for months to buy it, wanting to look appropriate for Robert's wedding. At the ceremony, I sat in the back row as instructed. I watched Robert stand at the altar looking handsome and nervous. I cried when he said his vows. But I noticed something. When the officiant mentioned Robert's family, he talked about Richard and Margaret, about Lauren's parents, about various relatives. But never once was I mentioned. Never once was my 38 years of raising him acknowledged. After the ceremony, I went to the reception at the luxury hotel. I found my assigned table, table 24, in the far corner, behind a pillar. I was seated with people I didn't know, distant relatives of the bride, I think. The reception was beautiful. Elegant decorations, 5-course meal, live band, everything expensive and perfect. But I felt invisible. I watched Robert and Lauren greet guests. I watched them pose for photos. I watched them dance. And I realized I wasn't really there. I was physically present, but I didn't matter. That's when I got up to help myself to some dessert. Old habits die hard. I'd served at countless parties in the Patterson house. Being near food felt comfortable. And that's when the woman approached me, asked who I was, started the chain of events that would expose everything. When more guests gathered, asking the same question, getting confused about why someone dressed like a guest but treated like staff was there, I made my decision. I would tell them the truth, all of it. But before I could speak, Victoria Sterling, Lauren's mother, jumped in with her explanation. She's the help. She works for the Patterson family. The guests nodded, satisfied with that answer. Case closed, mystery solved. But then that one guest, a younger woman, maybe mid-30s, looked at me more carefully. But if you're just the housekeeper, why do you look so sad? Like this wedding is breaking your heart. The room that had started to return to its conversations went quiet again. Because she was right. I did look sad. I was heartbroken. Because, I said, my voice steady, I raised the groom. For 38 years, I've been the one who was there for him. And today, I'm being treated like I'm invisible. Victoria laughed nervously. Oh, don't be dramatic. You're here, aren't you? We included you. You hid me in the back. You gave me conditions for attending. You made sure no one knew who I was because it would be awkward. Robert had pushed through the crowd now. Dorothy, please. Please what, Robert? Please be quiet. Please be grateful. Please remember my place. That's not what I... Tell them, I said, looking at him. Tell all these people who I am. Tell them who raised you. Tell them who was there for every important moment of your life. Tell them the truth. Robert looked at Lauren, who was shaking her head. At his parents, who looked uncomfortable. At Victoria, who looked horrified. Dorothy is our housekeeper, Robert said finally, his voice weak. She's worked for my family for a very long time. She's very important to us. Your housekeeper, I repeated. That's all I am. You know you're more than that. Then say it, in front of all these people. Tell them what I mean to you. The entire room was watching now. 200 guests, all silent, all waiting. And I realized Robert wasn't going to do it. He wasn't going to acknowledge me as family. He was going to protect his image, his new wife, his parents' business relationships. So I did something I'd never done before. I took control of my own story. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I looked around at the 200 faces staring at me, wealthy guests in expensive clothes, holding champagne glasses, waiting to see what the help would do next. My name is Dorothy Hayes, I said clearly. And yes, I've been the Patterson family's housekeeper for 38 years, but that title doesn't begin to describe what I've actually done for this family. Dorothy, this isn't the time, Margaret Patterson tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand. I think it's exactly the time, because all these people are here celebrating Robert's wedding, and none of them know the truth about who raised him. Richard Patterson stepped forward. Dorothy, we're grateful for your service, but you're making a scene. I'm making a scene? You invited me to this wedding with the condition that I sit in the back and not be acknowledged. You've hidden me like a shameful secret, and now you're worried about a scene. I turned back to the crowd. When Robert was born, I was there. His mother was recovering from a difficult delivery, and his father was closing a business deal in New York. I was the one who held Robert during his first night home. I was the one who woke up with him every 2 hours. For the first 6 months of his life, I spent more time with him than his own parents did. Margaret's face was red. We were building a business. We had responsibilities. And I had Robert. While you built your empire, I raised your son. His first steps. He took them toward me, not you. His first word. It was my name, or as close as a baby could get to Dorothy. I was there, Margaret. Always. Lauren spoke up, her voice sharp. This is completely inappropriate. You're ruining our wedding. I'm telling the truth. Is that so threatening to you? You're a housekeeper. You're trying to make yourself seem more important than you are. Am I? I looked at Robert. Tell them about when you were 8. Tell them about the spelling bee. Robert's face went pale. Dorothy, please don't. You won the regional spelling bee. It was the biggest achievement of your young life. You were so proud. You wanted your parents there to see you compete in the state championship. Do you remember what happened? Robert looked at the floor. Mom and Dad had a business trip. They chose a business trip over your spelling bee, and you were devastated. You cried for hours. Do you remember who sat with you? Who told you that you were important and special even if your parents couldn't be there? Who went to that state spelling bee and cheered louder than any other parent? Tears were rolling down Robert's face now. You did. And when you were 12 and those boys were bullying you at school, when you came home with a black eye and a bloody nose, your parents weren't home. They were at a real estate convention in Las Vegas. Who called the school? Who demanded a meeting with the principal? Who sat with you while you cried and told me you wanted to die because the bullying was so bad? You did, Robert whispered. And when you were 16 and Emma Clarkson broke your heart, when you locked yourself in your room for 3 days, your mother knocked once and told you to get over it. Your father said heartbreak was part of growing up, but who sat outside your door for hours? Who brought you food and talked to you through the door until you finally let me in? Who held you while you sobbed? You did. Robert was fully crying now. I turned to the crowd. For 38 years, I've been there for every moment of Robert's life. The good moments and the bad moments, the celebrations and the disappointments. I taught him to tie his shoes. I helped him with his homework every single night. I drove him to soccer practice, piano lessons, debate club. I was at every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every sports game, every award ceremony. Where were his parents, building their business, building their wealth, building their social status? That's not fair, Margaret protested. We provided everything for Robert, the best schools, the best opportunities. You provided money. I provided love. There's a difference. Victoria Sterling stepped forward. This is outrageous. You're an employee who's forgotten her place. You're trying to claim credit for a child you didn't give birth to. I didn't give birth to Robert, but I raised him. I was the one who was there. And now, at his wedding, I'm being hidden in the back because acknowledging me would be awkward for you people. You people, Victoria's voice was icy. How dare you? I dare because I've spent 38 years watching this family take credit for a child I raised while treating me like furniture. Appreciated when useful, ignored when not. I looked at Robert again. Do you remember what you used to call me when we were alone, when your parents weren't around? Robert wiped his eyes. Mama D. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lauren looked like she'd been slapped. You called her Mama. Because she was more of a mother to me then. Robert stopped himself, looking at Margaret. Then I was, Margaret finished, her voice breaking. Is that what you were going to say? Mom, I didn't mean. No, say it. Say what you really feel. Say that our housekeeper was more important to you than I was. You were busy. You were always busy. Dorothy was the one who was there. What was I supposed to do? The room was completely silent. This wealthy, perfect family was falling apart in front of 200 guests. Richard spoke up, his voice firm. Dorothy, you've made your point. You were an important part of Robert's childhood. We acknowledge that. But this is crossing a line. You're upsetting my wife, disrupting this wedding, and making wild claims. Wild claims. Everything I said is true, and you know it. Your role in Robert's life doesn't give you the right to cause chaos at his wedding. My role, I raised your son, Richard, not helped raise. Not assisted with raising. I raised him. While you were closing deals and making money, I was the one parenting your child. We paid you well for your services. Services? You think I did what I did for money? I loved Robert like he was my own son. I gave him 38 years of my life, and you think it was just a job. Lauren had heard enough. This is insane. Robert, tell her to leave. Now, she's ruining our wedding. She's not ruining anything, Robert said quietly. She's telling the truth, and you all know it. Robert, Lauren looked shocked. You're taking her side. I'm not taking sides, but Dorothy's right. She raised me. My parents paid the bills, but Dorothy was the one who was actually there. And we've treated her terribly. Hidden her away because she's the help. Made her sit in the back. Asked her to be grateful for being allowed to attend at all. She is the help, Victoria insisted. That's literally her job. She's your employee. She's more than that. Robert's voice was rising now. She's family. She's always been family. And I've let you people, he gestured at Lauren and her parents, convince me to treat her like she's nothing. Robert, calm down. Richard tried to intervene. No, Dad, I won't calm down. Dorothy's right, all of it. She was there for me when you and Mom weren't. She was the constant in my life. She was the one who loved me unconditionally. And I've repaid her by hiding her in the back at my wedding like a shameful secret. Lauren's voice was cold. If she's so important to you, maybe you should have married her instead of me. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? You're choosing your housekeeper over your wife on our wedding day. Do you understand how humiliating this is for me? How do you think Dorothy feels? Being told she's not worthy to sit with family after raising me for 38 years. One of the older guests spoke up, a distinguished-looking man I didn't know. Robert, I have to say, this is highly unusual. While I understand you're fond of Dorothy, your wife has a point. She's your employee. You can't treat employees like family. It blurs important boundaries. Boundaries? Robert laughed bitterly. What boundaries? Dorothy was the one who... He stopped, his face changing. There's something else, something no one here knows, something that explains exactly why Dorothy isn't just the help. Everyone leaned forward, interested. What secret could possibly justify this chaos? Margaret's face went white. Robert, don't. Don't what, Mom? Tell the truth. Why not? We're already telling truths today. Robert, please. There was fear in Margaret's voice now. Tell them, I said quietly. Tell them all of it. Robert took a deep breath. When I was 16, I got really sick, really sick. I had leukemia. Several guests gasped. This was clearly news to many of them. I needed a bone marrow transplant. My parents were tested, neither was a match. We searched the National Registry, no matches. Time was running out. The doctors said without a transplant, I'd die. Lauren grabbed his arm. Robert, I didn't know any of this. My parents kept it quiet, didn't want people knowing their son might die. Bad for the business image, you know, but Dorothy, his voice broke. Dorothy got tested, even though she was terrified of needles, even though the procedure is painful. She got tested. No, Margaret whispered. Robert, please stop. She was a perfect match. Dorothy donated her bone marrow to me. She spent weeks recovering from the procedure, in pain, barely able to move. And she never told anyone, never asked for recognition, never demanded anything. She just did it because she loved me. The room erupted. Guests were talking loudly, turning to each other in shock. Lauren looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You saved his life. Lauren's voice was barely a whisper. I did what any mother would do, I said simply. But you're not his mother. I'm the closest thing he had. Margaret and Richard were too busy to even be there for most of the medical appointments. Dorothy was there for all of them. She held my hand during chemo. She slept in the hospital room on a chair when I was too scared to be alone. She was there. Margaret was sobbing now. Richard had his arm around her, looking devastated. Victoria Sterling spoke up, her voice much softer now. You donated bone marrow. That's extraordinary. It's what you do for the people you love. But they're not your people. You're their employee. No, Robert said firmly. She's my family. She's always been my family, and I've been a coward for not saying that publicly before now. He turned to Lauren. I'm sorry this is happening at our wedding. I'm sorry it's uncomfortable and messy, but Dorothy is right. We've treated her terribly, and it ends now. What are you saying? Lauren's voice was sharp with warning. I'm saying Dorothy is family. Real family. Blood family, if you count the bone marrow that's literally keeping me alive. And if you can't accept that, if you can't treat her with the respect she deserves, then we have a problem. Are you threatening our marriage, on our wedding day, over your housekeeper? She's not just my housekeeper. Why can't you understand that? Lauren looked at her parents, then at Robert, then at me. Fine, you want her to be family? Then she can sit at the family table. She can be in family photos. She can give a toast. Let's make this official. Let's show everyone that the mighty Patterson family considers their housekeeper to be one of them. Her voice was dripping with sarcasm. She was calling Robert's bluff, expecting him to back down. Instead, Robert said, Okay. What? Okay, Dorothy should sit at the family table. She should be in the photos. She should give a toast, all of it, because she earned it. She earned all of it by actually raising me while my parents were too busy to be bothered. Richard found his voice. Robert, that's enough. You're upset, but you need to calm down and think about what you're saying. I'm thinking very clearly. For the first time in years, actually. Dad, you and Mom provided financially for me. I'm grateful for that. But Dorothy provided everything else. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Margaret had stopped crying and was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger, hurt, guilt. Dorothy, she said finally, is this what you wanted? To expose our family's private matters in front of all these people? To humiliate us at our son's wedding? I didn't want any of this, I said honestly. I wanted to be at Robert's wedding and feel like I belonged there. I wanted the people who matter to Robert to know how much I love him. I didn't want to be hidden away like a shameful secret. So you decided to air our dirty laundry publicly. I decided to tell the truth when someone asked who I was. That's all. An older woman, one of the guests from my table, spoke up. I think Dorothy has every right to be upset. If everything she's saying is true and no one has disputed it, then she's been treated abominably. You people should be ashamed of yourselves. How dare you, Victoria started, but the woman cut her off. I'm Evelyn Morrison. I've known the Patterson family for 15 years, and I had no idea about any of this. Richard, Margaret, you've been taking credit for raising a wonderful young man while your housekeeper did all the actual work. That's despicable. Other guests started murmuring agreement. The tide was turning. People were looking at the Pattersons and the Sterlings with disapproval instead of sympathy. Lauren looked around at the changing mood and made a decision. Fine, Dorothy, you win. You can stay at the reception. You can sit wherever you want. You can take all the credit for raising Robert. Are you happy now? This isn't about winning or credit. It's about being seen, being valued, being treated like I matter. You matter, Robert insisted. You've always mattered to me. I'm sorry I didn't show it better. I'm sorry I let Lauren and her family make you feel small. I'm sorry I let my own parents minimize your role in my life. He walked over to me and took my hands. Mama D, I love you. You saved my life twice, once with your bone marrow and once with your love when I needed it most. Please forgive me for being too weak to stand up for you sooner. I looked at this man, this boy I'd raised, and felt my anger melting away. I forgive you, sweetheart. I just want you to be happy. I can't be happy if the people I love are being disrespected. Lauren's voice was quiet but firm. So where does that leave us, Robert? Because right now, it sounds like you're choosing your housekeeper over your wife. I'm choosing to honor someone who deserves honor. If that's a problem for you, Lauren, then we need to talk about what kind of marriage we're going to have. The tension in the room was unbearable. A wedding reception had turned into a family intervention, and 200 guests were watching it unfold. Then something unexpected happened. An older black woman, someone I'd never seen before, walked up to the microphone on the stage where the band had been playing. Excuse me, she said, her voice commanding attention. "My name is Dr. Patricia Williams. I'm a psychologist and I'm a guest of the Sterling family. May I say something?" Victoria nodded, looking confused about where this was going. Dr. Williams continued, "I've been watching this situation unfold, and I feel compelled to speak. What's happening here is not unusual. It's actually a very common dynamic in wealthy families." "What dynamic?" someone asked. "The dynamic where someone, usually a woman, provides the actual labor of raising children while the biological parents provide money and take credit. This happens with nannies, housekeepers, and other domestic workers all the time. They become deeply attached to the children they raise, and the children become attached to them. But society doesn't recognize these relationships as legitimate because the caregiver is just the help." "That's exactly right," I said. Dr. Williams nodded. "Dorothy has been providing what we call invisible labor. She's done all the emotional work of parenting while getting none of the recognition. And now that she's asking for acknowledgement, she's being told she's overstepping her bounds. It's a classic case of class-based exploitation." "That's a bit harsh," Richard started. "Is it? Mr. Patterson, your housekeeper saved your son's life by donating bone marrow, and you seated her in the back of his wedding reception behind a pillar. If that's not exploitation, I don't know what is." Several guests applauded. Others looked uncomfortable. The Pattersons and Sterlings looked furious. But Dr. Williams wasn't finished. "Here's what needs to happen. This family needs to acknowledge Dorothy's role publicly and genuinely, not grudgingly, not as damage control, but as a real recognition of what she's meant to Robert. If they can't do that, then everything Dorothy is saying about being valued only for her labor is true." All eyes turned to Richard and Margaret Patterson. Richard cleared his throat. "Dorothy, you've been an important part of our family for a very long time. We're grateful for everything you've done for Robert." "That's exactly what I mean," Dr. Williams interrupted. "You're grateful, like she's a service provider, not family. Mr. Patterson, can you look at Dorothy and tell her and all these guests that you love her, that she's family? Can you say those words?" Richard looked uncomfortable. Margaret was staring at the floor. The silence stretched on. And I realized they couldn't say it. After 38 years, they couldn't call me family, couldn't say they loved me. Because to them, I really was just the help. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The silence was deafening. 200 guests watched Richard and Margaret Patterson struggle with a simple question. Could they acknowledge me as family? Robert's voice cut through the tension. "They can't say it, can they? After 38 years, my parents can't say they love the woman who raised their son." Margaret finally looked up, her eyes red. "It's not that simple, Robert." "Yes, it is. It's the simplest thing in the world. Either Dorothy is family or she's not. Either you love her or you don't. We appreciate her." "I don't want appreciation," I said quietly. "I've had 38 years of appreciation. Of being told I'm wonderful and valued and important. But appreciation isn't love, and it's not family." Richard tried again. "Dorothy, you have to understand. We come from a world where there are lines. Employers and employees, family and staff. Those lines exist for a reason." "What reason?" Dr. Williams challenged. "To make you feel superior. To ensure that the people who do the actual work of caring for your children know their place. To maintain order, to prevent this." Richard gestured at the chaos around us. "To prevent confusion about roles and relationships." "I'm not confused about my role," I said. "I raised Robert, I loved him, I saved his life. Those aren't services I provided. Those are things I did because he is like my own son. But you can't acknowledge that because it would mean admitting you weren't there, that you chose business over your child, and that's too uncomfortable a truth." Margaret's voice was sharp. "We did the best we could. We were building something, providing a future for Robert." "You were building wealth, but you weren't building a relationship with your son. I was." "So what do you want?" Margaret demanded. "An apology, recognition, Money. What will it take for you to stop humiliating us in front of our friends? I want the truth. I want you to admit that I raised Robert. I want you to stop calling me the help and start calling me family. That's asking too much. Why? Because it makes you uncomfortable. Because it challenges your narrative about being devoted parents. Lauren had been silent for a while, but now she spoke up. This is insane, all of it. Robert, your parents hired a housekeeper to help with childcare. That's normal. Wealthy families do it all the time. It doesn't make Dorothy your mother. She was more of a mother to me than my actual mother, Robert said bluntly. Margaret gasped like she'd been struck. How can you say that? Because it's true, Mom, I love you. But Dorothy was the one who was there, every day, every important moment. You weren't. I was building a company, so you could have everything you needed. I didn't need everything. I needed you, but you weren't available. Dorothy was. I watched this family tear itself apart and felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I'd wanted recognition, but I hadn't wanted this level of destruction. Maybe we should all take a break, I suggested. Cool down. This is Robert's wedding day. We shouldn't be. No, Robert interrupted. We're finishing this, right here, right now, because I'm tired of pretending, tired of hiding the truth to protect people's feelings. He looked at his parents. Do you want to know why I've been distant the past few years? Why I don't call very often? Why I make excuses to avoid family dinners? Robert, it's because being around you reminds me of how lonely my childhood was. Seeing you now, successful and proud, knowing that I spent that childhood feeling like I wasn't important enough for you to be there. Dorothy was my comfort, my consistency, and watching you take credit for how I turned out when you barely participated in raising me, it makes me angry. Richard's face was red. That's not fair. We sacrificed for you. You sacrificed time with me for business. That was your choice. But you don't get to pretend you were there when you weren't. And you don't get to diminish Dorothy's role because acknowledging it makes you look bad. An older gentleman I recognized as one of Richard's business partners spoke up. Richard, for what it's worth, I think your son has a point. I've known your family for 20 years. I've been to your house dozens of times. I've seen Dorothy with Robert. I always assumed she was a relative, an aunt maybe, because of how close they were. Learning she's just the housekeeper is surprising. Other guests murmured agreement. The mood was definitely shifting in my favor. Victoria Sterling tried to regain control. This has gotten completely out of hand. Yes, Dorothy was an important caregiver. Yes, she should be thanked. But turning a wedding reception into a therapy session is inappropriate. Can we please just move on? Move on to what? Robert asked. Pretending everything's fine, going back to hiding Dorothy in the corner, pretending she doesn't matter. I'm not saying she doesn't matter. Then what are you saying? Because it sounds like you're saying we should ignore this problem and go back to treating Dorothy like a second-class citizen. Lauren grabbed Robert's arm. Robert, I need to talk to you, privately, now. Whatever you need to say, you can say here. Fine, Lauren's voice was hard. You're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing yourself. You're ruining our wedding over your housekeeper's hurt feelings, and I need you to stop, right now. Her hurt feelings. Lauren, she saved my life. So you owe her gratitude. Send her a generous check. Give her a raise. But don't destroy our wedding day over this. I'm not destroying anything. I'm telling the truth. Your truth is humiliating me. Your truth is making my parents look bad. Your truth is turning what should be the happiest day of my life into a circus. So I'm asking you to stop. For me, for us, for our marriage. Robert looked at Lauren for a long moment. Then he looked at me, then back at Lauren. I can't. What? I can't stop, because if I stop now, nothing changes. Dorothy goes back to being invisible. My parents go back to taking credit for raising me, and I go back to feeling like I'm betraying the woman who was actually there for me. So you're choosing her over me. I'm choosing honesty over comfort. There's a difference. No, there's not today, not at our wedding. Lauren's voice broke. Robert, I need you to choose me, right now, in front of all these people. Choose your wife over your housekeeper. The entire room held its breath. This was it, the moment that would define everything. Robert looked at me. Mama D, I'm sorry this happened at my wedding. I'm sorry it got so public, but I'm not sorry for defending you. I'm not sorry for telling the truth. I know, sweetheart. And I'm not going to choose between you and Lauren, because that's a false choice. I can honor you both. Can you? Lauren's voice was cold. Because right now it feels like you're choosing her. I'm choosing integrity. I'm choosing to acknowledge someone who deserves acknowledgement. If that threatens you, we have bigger problems than Dorothy's presence at our wedding. Lauren stared at him, then at me, then at her parents. I need air. I need to think. She walked out of the reception hall. Her mother followed. Her father hesitated, glared at me like this was all my fault, then followed as well. Half the guests started talking at once. The other half sat in stunned silence. Robert turned to his parents. I need you to do something for me, for us, for our family. What? Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. I need you to publicly acknowledge Dorothy as family. I need you to tell everyone here that she's not just an employee, that she's been a mother to me in all the ways that matter. Robert, we can't. Why not? What are you so afraid of? Richard answered, we're afraid of exactly this, of people judging us, of our friends and business associates thinking we're bad parents, of admitting that we failed at the most important job we ever had. The honesty of that statement shocked everyone, including Richard himself. Margaret was crying again. We did fail, didn't we? We were so focused on building wealth, on achieving success, that we forgot to actually be there for our son. And Dorothy filled that void. She became what we should have been. Mom, Robert's anger was softening into sadness. No, it's true. Dorothy, I've resented you for years. Do you know that? I've resented you because Robert loved you in a way he never loved me, because you got all the precious moments I missed while I was working, because you were the one he turned to when he needed comfort or advice. I told myself it was fine, that you were doing your job, that I was doing mine. But the truth is, I was jealous. This admission stunned everyone, especially me. You were jealous of me. I couldn't quite believe it. Of course I was. You got to be the mother I couldn't be. You got his love, his trust, his affection. I got respect, maybe, gratitude for paying for things, but not the kind of deep bond you have with him. I paid you to raise my son, and then I resented you for doing it well. Margaret, I never meant to replace you. You didn't replace me. I was never there to be replaced. That's the painful truth. I chose work over my son. I chose success over motherhood. And you were the one who made sure Robert didn't suffer for my choices. I should be grateful. Instead, I've been bitter. Richard put his hand on his wife's shoulder. We both made those choices. We both prioritized wrong. And Dorothy, he looked at me, you've been covering for our failures for 38 years. I did it because I loved him, not to make you look bad. We know, but it did make us look good, didn't it? Everyone thought we were such devoted parents, such a success story. Self-made millionaires who still found time for family. But that was a lie. We didn't find time for family. You were the family while we were busy making money. Dr. Williams spoke up again. This is important. What you're doing right now, acknowledging the truth, this is what Dorothy needed. This is what Robert needed. Honesty about what actually happened. But what do we do now? Margaret asked. How do we fix this? You start by telling the truth. Publicly, clearly, no more calling Dorothy the help. No more minimizing her role. You tell everyone here that she raised Robert, that she's family, that you're grateful and ashamed and committed to doing better. Richard looked at the crowd of guests, many of whom were friends and business associates he'd known for decades, people whose respect mattered to him. Then he looked at me, at Robert, at his wife. All right, he said finally. He walked to the microphone. The band had long since stopped playing. The room was completely quiet. Can I have everyone's attention? Richard's voice was shaky. I need to say something about Dorothy, about my family, about the truth. Guests moved closer, interested. This was better than any entertainment they could have planned. 38 years ago, Margaret and I hired Dorothy Hayes to help us with our household. We were young, ambitious, building a business. When our son Robert was born, Dorothy became his primary caregiver. And as the years went by, as our business grew and demanded more of our time, Dorothy became more than a caregiver. She became Robert's mother in all the ways that actually matter. He paused, his voice breaking. I'm ashamed to admit this publicly. Ashamed that I paid someone else to raise my son while I chased success. Ashamed that I took credit for the man Robert became when Dorothy did all the actual work. Ashamed that we've treated her like an employee when she's actually family. Margaret joined him at the microphone. Dorothy Hayes is family. She's been family for 38 years. We were just too proud and too blind to acknowledge it. Robert was right to stand up for her tonight. He was right to demand that she be treated with respect and love, because she deserves both. She looked directly at me. Dorothy, I can't undo 38 years of taking you for granted. I can't give you back all the moments I should have been there for. But I can say this, I love you. You loved my son when I was too busy. You were there for him when I wasn't. You saved his life. You are family. You've always been family. I'm sorry it took a public confrontation for me to say it. The room erupted in applause. Some guests were crying. Dr. Williams was nodding approvingly. I felt tears streaming down my face. This was what I'd wanted, not to humiliate anyone, just to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be loved. Robert came over and hugged me. Thank you, Mama D, for everything, for raising me, for saving my life, for loving me even when I was too weak to defend you properly. I never stopped loving you, even when I felt invisible. You're not invisible, not anymore. Then Margaret approached. She looked uncertain, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. Dorothy, can you forgive me? For what? For all of it, for taking advantage of your love for Robert, for taking credit for your work, for treating you like you were less important than you are, for 38 years of exploitation. That's what Dr. Williams called it, and she's right. I exploited your love. I looked at this woman I'd worked for since I was 29, who'd never been cruel exactly, but had never been warm either. Who'd kept me at arm's length while expecting me to pour my heart into raising her son. I forgive you, I said, not because you deserve it, but because I'm tired of carrying hurt, and because I believe you mean this. Margaret hugged me, awkwardly at first, then tighter. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for loving my son better than I did. Richard approached next. Dorothy, Margaret, and I would like to do something, if you'll allow it. What? We'd like to legally adopt you, make you officially part of our family. You'd be Robert's sister, technically, though we all know you're really his mother. But legally, you'd be a Patterson. You'd be family in every sense of the word. I was stunned. Adopt me. I'm 67 years old. Adult adoption is legal. It would give you family status, legal recognition of what's always been true. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Robert urged. Please, Mama D, let us make this official. Let us make it right. I need to think about it. Of course, take all the time you need. Just then, Lauren and her parents returned to the reception hall. They'd clearly been gone for a while, missing the apologies and reconciliation. Lauren looked at the scene, me being hugged by Margaret, Robert holding my hand, Richard looking at me with something like respect. What did I miss? Lauren's voice was cautious. The truth, Robert said. My parents acknowledged Dorothy as family. They apologized. They're making things right. I see. Lauren approached me slowly. Dorothy, I owe you an apology too. You do? Yes, I treated you like you were nobody, like you didn't matter, like Robert's attachment to you was something weird that needed to be fixed. But I was wrong. You raised him. You loved him. You saved his life. That makes you incredibly important, and I should have recognized that from the beginning. Thank you, I said quietly. My mother pulled me aside and explained some things about class prejudice, about how I was raised to think of domestic workers as less than, about how that's wrong. I have a lot to learn, but I'm willing to learn if you're willing to teach me. I'm not here to teach anyone anything. I just want to be seen. You are seen. I see you now. and I'm sorry it took all this for me to really look. Victoria Sterling approached as well. Dorothy, I apologize too, for dismissing you, for calling you the help, for thinking your presence at this wedding was inappropriate. You're not inappropriate. You're necessary to Robert, to this family. I'm sorry I couldn't see that sooner. The tension in the room had finally broken. Guests were relaxing. Some were even smiling. The crisis had become a moment of genuine reconciliation. Dr. Williams approached me. You're very brave, Dorothy. I didn't feel brave. I felt cornered. Sometimes being cornered forces us to stand up for ourselves. You could have left quietly when they first questioned you. Instead, you demanded to be acknowledged. That took courage. I just wanted respect. And you got it. Not the hollow respect of politeness, but real respect earned through honesty and confrontation. That's rare. Robert called for everyone's attention. I know this has been an unusual wedding reception. I know we've all been through something intense, but I want to say something before we try to move forward with the celebration. He took Lauren's hand. Lauren, I love you. I'm sorry our wedding day turned into this, but I'm not sorry for standing up for Dorothy. She's family. She's always been family. And if we're going to build a life together, you need to understand that she's part of that life. I understand, Lauren said. I do now. Good, because I have an idea. Robert looked at me. Mama D, will you dance with me? The traditional mother-son dance. I felt my eyes fill with tears again. Robert, I'm not. You are. You raised me. You're my mother in all the ways that matter. So please, dance with me. The band started playing a slow song. Robert led me to the dance floor. 200 guests watched as the groom danced with his housekeeper, no, his mother. His real mother in the ways that actually mattered. Thank you, Robert whispered as we danced. For not giving up on me, for not leaving when things got uncomfortable, for demanding that I see you. Thank you for finally seeing me. I always saw you. Mama D, I just wasn't strong enough to make everyone else see you too. But I am now. We danced and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace, belonging, love. After our dance, Margaret approached. Dorothy, may I cut in? I nodded, stepping aside. Mother and son danced together, and I watched them with a strange mix of emotions. Happiness that they were connecting. Sadness for all the years they'd lost. Hope that maybe it wasn't too late for them to build something real. When their dance ended, the reception finally resumed. Music played. People ate and drank and talked. But the conversations now included me. Guests approached to thank me for my courage. To tell me their own stories of undervalued caregivers. To acknowledge that what I'd done was important. I was no longer invisible. But as the evening wore on, I couldn't shake one question. What happened now? The reception continued late into the night, but everything had changed. I was no longer the invisible woman in the corner. Guests approached me with genuine interest, asking about my life, my relationship with Robert, my experience raising him. One elderly woman named Charlotte Harper sat with me for nearly an hour. I had a nanny growing up, she told me. Her name was Mary. She raised me while my parents were busy with society functions. I loved her more than I loved my own mother, if I'm being honest. But I was never allowed to say that out loud. When I got married, my mother didn't even invite Mary to the wedding. She died 2 years later, and I never got to tell her how much she meant to me. What you did tonight, demanding to be seen, that was for every Mary who was ever invisible. Her story moved me deeply. How many people carried similar regrets? How many caregivers had poured their lives into children only to be erased when those children grew up? Around midnight, as the reception was winding down, Robert found me again. Mama D, can we talk outside? We stepped onto the hotel's terrace overlooking the city. The night was cool and clear. I've been thinking, Robert said, about what my dad said about adopting you, making you legally part of our family. Robert, that's very sweet, but... Please hear me out. I know it sounds strange. Adult adoption. But Mama D, I want you to have legal status in our family. I want you to have inheritance rights. I want you to be protected if something happens to my parents or to me. I want it to be official that you're not just someone who worked for us, but someone who is us. I don't need inheritance rights. I never did any of this for money. I know, but you deserve security. You deserve to know that you'll be taken care of, that you matter to us in legal, concrete ways, not just emotional ones. Let me think about it. Of course, there's no rush. He paused. Can I ask you something? Do you regret what happened tonight? The confrontation, everything? No, I said honestly. It was painful and messy and public, but it needed to happen. I couldn't keep being invisible, and you couldn't keep pretending I was just the help. I never thought of you that way. I hope you know that. I know, sweetheart, but you didn't correct people when they did. You let Lauren and her family treat me like I was nobody. You seated me in the back. You were ashamed of loving me because it was inconvenient for the image you wanted to project. He winced. You're right, I was a coward. You found your courage tonight. That's what matters. Only because you forced the issue. If you hadn't stood up for yourself, I might have gone on hiding you forever. That's shameful. You're young. You're still learning who you want to be. Tonight, you learned that the kind of man you want to be is one who honors the people who actually matter, not just the people society says should matter. We stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights. Lauren's scared, Robert said finally. Of what? That she can never compete with you. That she'll always be second to the woman who raised me. Her mother pulled her aside, and they had a long talk about it. Victoria told Lauren that she needs to accept you as part of our family or our marriage won't survive. Do you think she can accept me? I don't know, but she's going to try. And so am I, he took my hand. Mama D, I want you in my life, in our life, Lauren's and mine. I want you to be grandma to our children someday. I want Sunday dinners where you're at the table, not in the kitchen serving. I want holidays where you're opening presents with us, not cleaning up after us. Can we do that? Can we build something new? I'd like that, but Robert, you need to understand something. I can't go back to being the help. Not after tonight. Either I'm family or I'm not. There can't be both. No more back-of-the-room seating. No more hiding me when it's convenient. I understand. You're family, period. And I'll make sure everyone knows it. Lauren appeared on the terrace. Am I interrupting? Not at all, I said. Join us. Lauren came and stood next to Robert, looking nervous. Dorothy, I've been talking with my mother about a lot of things, about how I was raised to view household staff, about prejudice and class and respect, and about you. What about me? My mother said something that hit hard. She said, if someone loved and raised your husband and you treat them poorly, you're insulting the man you married. That made me realize, by dismissing you, I was dismissing the most important part of Robert's life, the part that made him who he is. I appreciate that. I want to do better. I want to learn how to be part of a family that includes you, not as an employee, not as a tolerated outsider, but as Robert's mother, which is what you are, regardless of biology or legal documents. That means a lot to me, Lauren. I'm not going to lie and say this is easy for me. I'm not used to this kind of blurred relationship. In my family, staff are staff and family is family. But clearly, your family does things differently. And since I'm marrying into your family, I need to adapt. Are we really family now? I asked. Or are we just saying pretty words? Robert and Lauren exchanged glances. Then Robert said, we're really family. And to prove it, I want to ask you something. Will you move out of my parents' house and come live with Lauren and me? I was shocked. Live with you? Yes, we have a 4-bedroom house. 1 bedroom is ours, 1 is a guest room, 1 is Robert's office. And 1 could be yours, your own space, your own home, as part of our family, not as staff. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Lauren urged. I know we've gotten off to a terrible start, but I want to make this right. I want you to be part of our daily lives, part of our family, not visiting, living with us. What about your parents? I looked at Robert. I've worked for them for 38 years. I live in their house. I already talked to them, Robert said. They understand. They said it's time you had a real home, a place where you're family, not staff. They're going to hire someone new to help with the house. But you're done being a housekeeper. From now on, you're just Mama D. I felt overwhelmed. This is a lot to process. Take your time, Lauren said gently. We're not going anywhere, but please know the offer is genuine. We want you with us. Can I think about it? Of course. We returned to the reception, which was now down to maybe 50 guests. Margaret and Richard were talking with a group of their friends, and I caught snippets of their conversation. Should have acknowledged her years ago. Brave of them to admit their mistakes. That poor woman, raising their child while they... Margaret noticed me and broke away from the group. Dorothy, can we talk? Of course. We found a quiet corner. Margaret looked exhausted but somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. I meant what I said earlier, about the adoption, about making you legally family. Richard and I have already contacted our attorney. We're serious about this. Why now? After 38 years, why now? Because we've been lying to ourselves for 38 years, telling ourselves that paying you well and treating you with respect was enough. But it wasn't enough. You deserved to be acknowledged, to be loved publicly, not just privately. Tonight forced us to face that truth. Are you doing this because you feel guilty, or because you genuinely want me as family? Margaret was quiet for a moment. Both, maybe. I do feel guilty, tremendously guilty, but I also genuinely care about you. I've always cared about you. I just never knew how to show it in a way that didn't acknowledge my own failures as a mother. You weren't a terrible mother, Margaret. You were just absent. Is there a difference? Yes, terrible mothers cause harm intentionally. Absent mothers cause harm through neglect. You neglected Robert emotionally, but you never wanted to hurt him. You just prioritized wrong. That's generous of you to say, more generous than I deserve. I'm not being generous. I'm being honest. You and Richard made mistakes, but you're trying to make them right. That takes courage. Will you forgive us? Really forgive us? I already have. Tonight, when you acknowledged me publicly, when you called me family, that's all I needed. But the adoption. I'll think about it. But Margaret, I don't need a legal document to feel like family. I just needed you to say it out loud, to claim me in front of people who matter to you. You did that tonight. Margaret hugged me again. And this time, it felt natural, like we were finding our way toward something real. The reception finally ended around 2 a.m. As guests departed, many stopped to say goodbye to me, to thank me for my bravery and honesty, to tell me I'd given them something to think about. Dr. Patricia Williams was one of the last to leave. Dorothy, I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to write about what happened tonight. Anonymously, of course, for a professional journal. This was a textbook case of invisible labor becoming visible. I don't mind. If it helps other people in similar situations, I'm happy to contribute. You've done more than contribute. You've sparked something. Several guests approached me tonight saying they're going to have conversations with their own domestic workers, acknowledging them, treating them better. You've created ripples that will spread far beyond this wedding. After she left, it was just the Pattersons, the Sterlings, Lauren, Robert, and me. What now? Richard asked. We can't just pretend tonight didn't happen. We shouldn't pretend, Robert said. We should build on it. We should create something new. A family that's honest about who we are and who matters to us. Easier said than done, Victoria Sterling commented. Old habits die hard. Social conventions die harder. Then we change our social conventions, Lauren said firmly. My mother's right. We've been complicit in a system that devalues people like Dorothy. People who do the most important work while getting the least recognition. That ends with us, with our family. Brave words. Her father, James Sterling, spoke for the first time in hours. But can you live up to them? When you're at country club functions and someone asks about Dorothy, can you introduce her as family? When your society friends raise eyebrows because your former housekeeper is sitting at your dinner table, can you handle their judgment? Yes, Lauren said without hesitation, because Dorothy is worth more than any of those people's opinions. I felt a swell of hope. Maybe this really could work. Maybe something genuine could be built from tonight's chaos. We said our goodnights. Robert and Lauren were staying at the hotel, the bridal suite they'd reserved months ago. The Pattersons and Sterlings were going home, and I was returning to the Patterson house with Richard and Margaret. In the car, Margaret said, "Dorothy, I know Robert asked you to move in with him and Lauren. I want you to know we support that. It's time you had a real home, a place where you're not working. I've been at your house for 38 years. It feels like home." "But it's not, is it? You live in the staff quarters. You've always maintained that separation, even if we've been casual about it. With Robert and Lauren, you could have something different, something better." "What will you do without me?" "We'll adjust. We're in our 60s now, not our 20s. We don't need live-in help anymore. We can hire someone to come in a few times a week, but you deserve to actually retire. To live with family, not work for family." "I'm not ready to retire. I'm only 67. "Then don't retire. Volunteer, pursue hobbies, spend time with Robert, but stop being anyone's employee. You've earned that." When we got to the house, I went to my room, the small suite in the back where I'd lived for nearly 4 decades. It was comfortable, even nice. But Margaret was right. It wasn't really home. It was where I lived while working. I thought about Robert's offer, a room in his house, a space that was mine, being part of a family as family, not as staff. It was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. 3 days after the wedding, I made my decision. I called Robert. "I'll move in with you and Lauren, but on one condition." "What condition?" "That if it doesn't work, if I'm in the way, if it's awkward, if Lauren can't adjust, you tell me honestly. I don't want to overstay my welcome." "You could never overstay your welcome. But yes, I promise. Honesty, always." 2 weeks later, I moved into Robert and Lauren's house. They decorated my room beautifully. Comfortable furniture, warm colors, a small sitting area where I could read. "This is your space," Lauren said as she showed me around. "You can decorate however you want. Change anything, make it yours." "It's perfect, thank you." The first few weeks were awkward. Old habits died hard. I kept trying to cook and clean. Lauren kept stopping me. "Dorothy, you're not here to work. You're here to be family." "But I see dishes in the sink." "So I'll wash them, or Robert will. But not you, you're off duty." It took time to adjust, to let someone else cook dinner, to sit at the table instead of serving, to relax instead of always working. But slowly, it started to feel natural. Robert's parents came for Sunday dinner one week. It was strange seeing Margaret in my kitchen, well, in Lauren's kitchen, helping cook while I sat and talked with Richard. "This is surreal," I commented. "Which part?" Richard asked. "All of it, sitting here while your wife cooks, being a guest in someone else's home after being staff for so long, all of it." "You're not a guest, you're family. There's a difference." I'm still learning what that difference feels like. 2 months after the wedding, the Pattersons made good on their promise. They filed for adult adoption. I became, legally, Dorothy Patterson Hayes, a member of the family in every sense. The court hearing was brief. The judge seemed amused and touched by the whole situation. In all my years on the bench, I've never seen an adult adoption quite like this. But it's clear you're making official what's been emotionally true for decades. Congratulations. When we left the courthouse, I had a new birth certificate, a new legal status. I was no longer just the housekeeper who raised Robert. I was officially his family. 6 months after the wedding, Lauren told me she was pregnant. "You're going to be a grandmother," she said, crying happy tears. "A real grandmother, not the help who watches the baby, an actual grandmother." I cried too. I'd love that. "Will you help me? With the baby? I don't know what I'm doing, and you've raised a child before." "I'd be honored. But Lauren, I'll help as a grandmother, not as a nanny. There's a difference." "I understand, and I want that difference. I want you to enjoy this baby, not work with this baby." When baby Emma was born 8 months later, I held her with tears streaming down my face. This was my granddaughter, not a child I was hired to care for, my actual granddaughter. Robert watched me with her and smiled. "You're a natural, Mama D." "I've had practice," I joked. "No, it's more than that. You love naturally, without conditions, without expectations. That's a gift. 1 year after the wedding, Robert and Lauren hosted an anniversary party. Not as elaborate as the wedding, but still nice. Family and close friends gathered at their house. During the party, Robert stood up to make a toast. A year ago today, Lauren and I got married. It should have been the happiest day of our lives. Instead, it turned into one of the most difficult days, and ultimately one of the most important. He looked at me. Because that's the day we finally told the truth, about who really raised me, about who really deserved honor and recognition, about who really mattered in my life. Mama D, you've been my mother in all the ways that count for 39 years now. I'm sorry it took me so long to say that publicly. I'm sorry I let fear and social pressure keep me from acknowledging you the way you deserved. But I'm not sorry about what happened at our wedding, because that chaos led to this. He gestured around the room at our gathered family, a family that's honest, real, based on love, not convenience or social convention. He raised his glass. To Mama D, the woman who saved my life twice, once with her bone marrow, once with her love. Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for demanding to be seen. Thank you for being my mother. Everyone raised their glasses. To Dorothy. I looked around the room at the family I'd fought so hard to be acknowledged in. Margaret and Richard, who'd finally learned to value me properly. Lauren, who'd grown from dismissive to genuinely loving. Baby Emma, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. And Robert, my boy, who'd finally found the courage to honor me publicly. It had taken 39 years, a public confrontation, and tremendous pain to get here. But we'd made it. We'd created something real. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, I sat in my room thinking about the journey. Someone had asked who I was during the wedding reception, and the room had gone quiet because nobody knew. Nobody could explain why the housekeeper was there. Nobody understood what I meant to Robert. But now, if someone asked who I was, the answer was clear. I was Dorothy Patterson Hayes, mother, grandmother, family. Not because I'd given birth to Robert, not because of biology or traditional family structures, but because I'd been there, because I'd loved when others were too busy, because I'd saved his life, because I'd refused to be invisible. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. 3 months after the anniversary party, something unexpected happened. Margaret called me one afternoon. Dorothy, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago. What is it? When Robert was sick, when he had leukemia, Richard and I were terrified, but we were also ashamed. Ashamed of what? That we'd been so absent from his life that when he needed us most, he didn't turn to us. He turned to you. And when the doctors said he needed a bone marrow transplant, when Richard and I weren't matches, our first thought wasn't, who can we find to save our son? It was thank God Dorothy is here. Margaret, we knew you'd get tested. We knew you'd do anything for Robert, and we counted on that. We exploited your love to save his life, and then we never properly thanked you. We never acknowledged that you literally saved our son. You did thank me. We gave you a raise and a bonus. We treated it like you'd done us a service. But Dorothy, you gave Robert life. Twice. Once by raising him. Once by giving him your bone marrow. That deserves more than money. It deserves eternal gratitude. And we never gave you that. You're giving it to me now. It's late. Too late, really. But I need you to know, Richard and I will be grateful for the rest of our lives. Not just for saving Robert's life, but for giving him a childhood full of love when we couldn't. We talked for another hour, about the past, about mistakes made, about love given and taken for granted, about forgiveness and growth. It was healing in ways I hadn't expected. That evening, I reflected on how much had changed in 2 years since that wedding reception. How one moment of refusing to be invisible had transformed everything. I thought about all the people like me. The nannies, housekeepers, caregivers who poured their lives into children while remaining invisible to the world. And I thought about Dr. Williams's words, that I'd created ripples. I hoped those ripples would reach other households, other families who employed people to care for their children, other caregivers who deserve to be seen and valued. Because at the end of the day, we all deserve to be acknowledged, to be loved, to be family in all the ways that matter. Not because of biology, not because of legal documents, but because of the love we give and the lives we touch. I was Dorothy Patterson Hayes. I'd been the invisible housekeeper for 38 years. But during that wedding reception, when someone asked who I was, everything changed. The room went quiet because they didn't know how to answer. Now they knew. I was family, and I always would be. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.